title of my talk tonight is The Reason in Rhyme. When I raise the question of the reason in rhyme, I don't so much mean why rhyme, but rather how is reason, the meaning-making faculty in the mind, at work in rhyme? The reason poets rhyme is to provide poems with a structural component and along with meter to enforce memorability. Rhyme as a mnemonic device. Mnemosyne, you remember, was the mother of the muses. That's where we get our word mnemonic. And we all remember 30 days hath September, April, June, and November. I'd like to move past this reason and into the deeper question of how like-sounding words contribute to and in fact form the channels in the stream of a poem's sense. I hope to suggest a few possible meanings or reasons of rhyme in poems and how meaningful rhyme, when used reasonably, can be. As a structural component, rhyme draws the poet to use certain words and to employ them in certain places that he might not otherwise have chosen, according to what we call the rhyme scheme, an orderly arrangement of things into a recognizable pattern or system. The need for a rhyme opens a lexical field of potential, possible words, to a poet, who then decides how sound will bear upon sense. If I need a rhyme for frost, the sense of what I'm saying must proceed in the direction of tossed, lost, cost, etc. There's thus a sense of determinism, of the language deciding something for me within a limited field, but I must exercise my own determination. Rhyme is not to be used casually or unthinkingly, but with deliberation and deliberateness. Bad rhyme happens when the sense rides too heavily on the sound, when the need for a rhyme leads the poet to say something he does not want to say or should not have said. Good rhyme, conversely, draws the poet into an aptitude of expression, perhaps surprising even himself by the fit conjoining of sound and sense. Good rhyme surprises us with its unexpected aptness, which feels a paradox if we expect what's right or apt to be self-evident. The thinking, deliberate poet discovers for us the rightness of an unheeded, heretofore unevident relation in rhyme. What are some examples of good and bad rhyming? I've given you a handout. I'll be referring to these as we go along. Keats's early poem, Sleep and Poetry, begins, "What is more gentle than a wind in summer? What is more soothing than the pretty hummer that stays one moment in an open flower and buzzes cheerily from bower to bower?" The only conceivable reason Keats's bee is called a pretty hummer is because the poet needs the rhyme with summer, creating a rhyme that is literally a bummer. The rhyme is full, but it prompts the feeling that it was chosen when the poet's critical faculties were asleep, as the poem's title suggests. What could be dumber than the pretty hummer? What would a more deliberate, thinking, conscious poet have chosen? Perhaps to have avoided the bee altogether, or to have sought another image to imply tranquility, a soothing lute strummer, or to have kept the bee and avoided the full rhyme, as Emily Dickinson does in this stanza from "It Will Be Summer Eventually." The lilacs bending many a year will sway with purple load. The bees will not despise the tune their forefathers have hummed. Not told, which we expect in the world of human forefathers, but much better, since it's the sound bees make, hummed. That's the slantest of rhymes that I can think of, what I'll call a syllabic rhyme. You meet something similar to it in early Dylan, in lines joined by feminine endings, which are lines that end with a non-stressed syllable. This from The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll. Williams and Zinger killed poor Hattie Carroll with a cane that he twirled round his diamond ring finger at a Baltimore hotel society gathering, and the cops were called in and his weapons took from him as they rode him in custody down to the station and booked Williams and Zinger for first-degree murder. Or in T.S. Eliot's near blank verse of the compound ghost section of Little Gidding, where the poet employs an appropriate terza rima stanza composed of alternating feminine and masculine endings. In the uncertain hour before the morning, near the ending of interminable night, at the recurrent end of the unending, after the dark dove with the flickering tongue had passed below the horizon of his homing, while the dead leaves still rattled on like tin, and so on. The question rises among these examples, is slant rhyme more interesting to our ear? To return to my title, for what reason might a poet choose slant rhyme over full rhyme? There might be something in the nature of the experience being described that calls for dissonance over harmony, particularly if that experience is wrenching. In War and Peace, Alexander Pope's quote applies, the sound must seem an echo to the sense. One variation of slant rhyme, called para-rhyme, Wilfred Owen puts to marvelous wrenching effects in his poem Strange Meeting. The scene is the First World War, envisioned as a kind of hell, something out of Dante's Inferno. Here is Owen's opening sentence. It seemed that out of battle I escaped, down some profound, dull tunnel long since scooped, through granites which titanic wars had groined. Yet also their encumbered sleepers groaned, too fast in thought or death to be bestirred. Escaped, scooped, groined, groaned. What rhymes with bestirred? As with the other para-rhymes, Owen will take the last syllable of stirred, wrench the vowel out of its middle, and screw back into it, its dissonant but not so distant cousin. Then, as I probed them, one sprang up and stared. Perfect, the way that line enacts the right use and service of rhyme, the poet's probing for fresh discoveries, a springing up into the mind and eye and ear, its attention. Finally, our staring at a previously unforeseen relation, stirred, stared. Keats called rhyme a kiss of words, and we've considered the rather flabby kiss of summer hummer. His metaphor of the kiss is apt. Words require lips to speak them, and leads to the final sense I'd like to stress about rhyme, a relationship between words similar to the relationship between things that we find in metaphor. A few metaphorical ways of understanding metaphor. A bridge of likeness spanning two unlike things which allows conceptual crossing. A wheelbarrow vehicle carrying a load. A harness holding two dissimilar things in tandem, drawing the carriage, the metaphor, forward. An eclipse of one thing over another, moon over sun, so that we see them both at once, in the light and shadow of each other. Both the light and the shadow, the similarities and the dissimilarities, are meaningful. In pictorial terms, the field of likeness, the foreground, where the similarities meet, is given contour and definition by the field of unlikeness, the depth or negative space against which it stands. Can this pictorial analogy be applied to sound? The obvious field of likeness in rhyme is the concord, and in Owen and Dickinson, the discord of vowel and consonant. But there is also a field of likeness in the conceptual way, the sense of how the rhyming words relate. This is the bridge that the poet constructs between the words through sense, and it's this that resembles metaphor. The most obvious and oldest rhymes in English hold this relation most clearly and simply. Breath, death, womb, tomb, light, night. In each case, the one being merely the absence of the other, except in womb, tomb, where the one is merely the inverted image of the other at life's opposite ends. Shakespeare plays with this and with another old rhyme in Sonnet 65, which opens, since brass, nor stone, nor earth, nor boundless sea, but sad mortality o'ersways their power, how with this rage shall beauty hold a plea, whose action is no stronger than a flower? Two things are being seen in like and unlike terms here. The overswaying power of sad mortality contrasts with the delicate ephemeral flower, but the flower's power, the rhyme suggests that there is something of power in flower, is, and through it, beauty's power, may hold, if only for an hour, itself against this mortal sway. Beauty, represented by the flower, is doomed in the individual incarnation, but perennial, recurrent like rhyme, in the life of the species. Sad mortality can never quite kill it off. That's flower power, seen in every daisy, itself a metaphor, the day's eye, the overswaying sun. So rhyme in Shakespeare's lines operates like metaphor through which we see two like-sounding words standing in sense relation to each other. Some other examples. What's the easiest rhyme with rhyme? Time. But that's not the closest rhyme. If we want two words that not only sound alike, but look alike as well. So not time, T-I-M-E, but time, T-H-Y-M-E. A more interesting, because a less expected or familiar rhyme. Next step. What's the sense relation between those two words? The poet would have to find it for us in and through the lines of verse that connect them. What is the conceptual bridge from rhyme to time? Well, one might be that time is used in recipes to rhyme, agree with, harmonize with other ingredients, such as chicken. That's the time rhymes. It's been pointed out many times that Macbeth rhymes with death the first time his name appears in the play. We might call this rhyme as destiny. There are so many other things, so many other kinds of rhyming we might think of and on. Sight rhymes, for example, where the poet joins words with relations we can see but cannot say. Look at Geoffrey Brock's poem, Exercitia Spiritualia. It's a prime and supreme example of a sight rhyme working in a sonnet, where the whole point in the poem is that the lovers are always almost but not quite coming together, like the kisses of words the piece employs. I won't read the whole poem, but just look at the four rhymes in the rhymes in the first stanza. Key, Q-U-A-Y, the British word rhymes with Paraguay. Look at the last four letters. Foucault, the French philosopher, literary theorist, rhymes with assault. You can see it, but you can't say it. You can't make it rhyme in your mouth. Spend some time with this sonnet. It's wonderful. Some other kinds, there's what we might call sense rhyme, where the two words rhyme in relation outside sound. The poet is imagining a world where, for instance, truth rhymes with reality, or a world where, as Seamus Heaney writes, hope and history rhyme. Or there's anagrammatical rhyme, which may feel mysteriously apt in some cases. Elvis lives, anagram. Or palindrome, palindromatic rhyme, which might suggest something about character. Take the name Natasha, move it backwards. Ah, Satan. Any kind, in fact, to suggest and demonstrate the conjuncture of two words and in them an ideational relation. That's the point. You can see a reason, a logical relation between any two rhyming words. It's the poet's job to forge those relations for us to see, and to do it in surprising, fresh, and apt ways. The sounds and letters form the natural link between the words. The poet forges and applies the link of sense. I'll close with a short poem by Robert Frost that you may know that perfectly enacts this relation, not just through its perfect, meaning full rhymes, but through its perfect bridging of sound and sense. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief, so dawn goes down to day. nothing gold can stay. To hold the gold of a flower for an hour, in the grief perennial as every leaf, the yearning for it to stay with every passing day. This is what the rhymes of Frost's poem say. Thanks.